Thank you everyone for joining us this morning. Hoosiers across the state, Democrats, Republicans, all between, are all sharing a heightened sense of uneasiness ahead of this election. Many races have been scrutinized and magnified at a level that we haven't seen in recent memory. And with the public already concerned about the election process, it should be the duty of our state and elected officials to calm the waters ahead of what is sure to be a very vigorous election. But unfortunately, this hasn't happened. Instead, Secretary of State Connie Lawson rushed to judgment without apparently knowing all the facts or without doing her homework.
Secretary of State Lawson has now tried publicly to compromise the voting process itself, and there is some misinformation that simply needs to be corrected. So here are the facts. Secretary Lawson merged two stories to fit the overall national voter election narrative created by Donald Trump, Mike Pence ticket. For starters, there is a claim that the Patriot USA majority PAC altered or mishandled voter registration forms ahead of the voter registration deadline. And also, the IDP has said on the record before, any confirmed acts of wrongdoing or violations of state election law need to be dealt with accordingly by proper authorities, period. Then there are reports of voter information errors in the Secretary of State's database. It's important to stress that information about Hoosier votes are fluid and change from election year to election year. For example, Jane Doe in Kokomo, Indiana could get married and change her last name. John Smith from Tipton, Indiana could move and need to re-register his new voting address. Voters' information changes all the time. However, the problem sometimes is that voters who register at an early age or at one location simply forget to update their voter registration information, which then causes confusion during election years like this one. Further, county clerks and election officials are tasked with merging voter files all the time. That means, for example, John F. Smith from Peru, Indiana, and a John H. Smith from Bunker Hill, Indiana, could accidentally be merged as one voter. While this may seem frustrating, the reality is that this process is never ending. What Hoosiers are seeing in the news is not voter fraud, period. In fact, what we are seeing are voter registration errors in various counties across the state. These errors are to be addressed and dealt with between county clerks and the Secretary of State's office. And sometimes there may not be errors at all, but irregularities in registration names, such as Bob versus Robert.
Lawson's statements are vague at best and reek of partisanship. There's unfortunately no way to get around that. It very much seems like a last-ditch effort to have influence on this election. And as we saw last night, her actions have paved the way for the inflammatory rhetoric we witnessed, where a major party's presidential nominee has now refused to agree that he would accept the results of our election and our country's proud tradition of the peaceful transition of power.